This is the Oregon Fan Show on Fan Media Network. Well, welcome into another episode of the Quack Corner, an Oregon Fan Show on the Fan Media Network. Alongside Juwaan Williams, I'm TJ Brassel, joined by a very special guest today, the foremost expert in all Pac-12 football, all things Pac-12 football, Yogi Roth. Yogi, thank you for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, man. Hey, you guys are the experts in Oregon Duck football, so I'm excited to learn from you today too.
We appreciate it. We're excited to have you on. Real quick, before we get to football, I just want to run through a few things, spring sports, because we got to give them some love too. Repping the track and field here right now. Oregon men's track and field with a 14th straight Pac-12 title. So congrats to them and good luck to them and the women's as they go for yet another natty. Shout out to Oregon men's baseball, still climbing the rankings. I believe they're 7 in the USA Today poll. They're as high as 6 in some of the other polls. Shout out to Oregon women's softball and all of the Pac-12 softball teams for getting disrespected yet again in the seedings for the tournament. So just go show everyone what y'all can do. We're excited to see you. And then men's and women's golf in the middle of their natty runs right now. So good luck to them. That being said, we have Yogi here. We're talking Oregon football. So Yogs, I mean, first things first, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about the draft, the spring game, all that kind of stuff. And Tyler, Juwaan, and I talked about who we think might be the most successful guy who got drafted in the NFL outside of Panay. We're like, okay, Panay, that's kind of a cop out of like, oh yeah, Panay will be great. But like outside of Panay, I want to hear your take on who do you think might be, when it's all said and done, have the best career?
That's a good one. Part of me wants to go Javon Holland because it's easy, right? The things he does naturally, guys don't do when they train at. Like he's really unique. But I don't know. I have like on loop is Diamador Lenore playing man press coverage over the weekend in training camp and just locking down a dude. And like I was like, does his legs ever get tired? Like it was an amazing clinic on how to play press coverage. So I'll probably go with him. I say that because I've known Diamador since he was coming out of high school. You saw him play from jump with the Ducks. And then what I loved is that he came back for this year. Like he came back to prove that, he could be an NFL player. He could have, not played this season. Nothing wrong with that. But I looked forward to watching him compete and kind of be the elder statesman on that defense, right? He wouldn't have been that based on Thomas Graham Jr., Javon Holland, as I referenced, just guys that would have been there. Brady Breeze, of course. So I probably go with him, but definitely one of those DVs.
Most definitely. I mean, that was pretty much who we said as well. And one thing I pointed out was that people were talking about how he didn't really have like the stats coming out of college, but people didn't throw at him because he shut receivers down. So it's kind of hard to like have pass breakups and stuff like that when like no one's throwing the ball at you, at least in my opinion. But that being said, so past the draft, also the spring game. I know we were talking about before this, how you got a chance to watch the spring game and kind of see the Ducks' first action of the year. What were your takeaways from what you saw?
Well, spring games are tough because they're going to be vanilla. You're not going to see everybody at their best. The teams have seen each other, right, in terms of offense, defense for 14 practices prior to that. So what I always evaluate is organization and how competitive it looks. And from the opening drive with Anthony Brown to Robbie Ashford towards the end of the game, this was a competitive environment. Bill Walsh called it a competitive cauldron. And Pete Carroll taught me that when I was working for him, of like, that's what you want to create. Can you create an environment where every moment has stakes and guys enjoy it? There's a big difference there, man. Like every moment has stakes and I'm going to lose my job and I'm fear-based as a performer, or let's cut it loose and go for it as a performer. And that's what I saw from the 2 freshman wide receivers that played extremely well. What was it? 7 grabs for 182 combined yards, I think. And then some of the vets, and then watching CJ Verdell finally healthy, catching the ball out of the backfield, let alone the defense. I mean, I felt like every time Justin Flo was even around the tackle, he was hyped. Right. And he hadn't played in a long time. And I just think that to me solidified what I needed to see. Organization, you're going to always have that under Coach Cristobal, but the competitiveness. And I think a lot of times when you see teams win like they've won and are young like they are, right? 80 players on this roster, guys, are freshmen, redshirt freshmen, or sophomores, as you know. Cool. That's an immature stat traditionally. I didn't feel that. Granted, I'm just watching in the TV copy. I talked to the staff, but I haven't been there. Like, I'll be there in camp, but I think this team is real. They've got a loaded roster and got a chance to make real noise.
When you have a crystal ball that comes from Alabama, who just constantly puts out NFL talent every year after year, you see the rub that Nick Saban had on him. You see it from the offensive line, defensive line. Those guys look completely different from when I was there. It's like, all right, they're lifting weights, they're eating weights, as we like to say in the weight room, and they're just producing. So I'm anxious to see what happens with the maturity and Anthony Brown at the helm throughout camp and as we go into the season.
How much can you really take away from the spring game with what you'll see come fall?
It's more of a first take at your current team. You know, before your freshmen get in, you have an analysis of what the team is right now at this moment.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think to add on to that, Juwaan, it's a different era now with the transfer portal, right? So you have signing day. Sometimes you sign everybody in the early period. Sometimes you sign half. Like, everybody's gonna have their own different philosophical approach. Oregon clearly is crushing it on signing day. But now that spring ends, I think to your point, like, you have a snapshot of what the team can be and a snapshot of what you need in recruiting and also in immediate help via free agency. So I'll be curious. I mean, Oregon has not shied away from competition. I don't think they have holes where they need to bring anybody in. I think they have, NFL players at every position, right? Michael Wright, NFL player at corner. Verone McKinley, NFL player at the safety position, right? And they brought young guys. Obviously, in the Pac-12 title game, you saw their other safety absolutely ball out, and Jamal Hill. So I don't think they have that. So now the next thing is real cultivation, right? Like spring. And what I love about football, and Coach Cristobal says it all the time, is we've got like different phases of our program. They've got their fourth quarter program, which is their off-season program. Then they have spring football, and then they have whatever, the 2 weeks off, and then it's an 8-week or whatever it is run to get to training camp. And that's where this team is now. And I can't wait to see the focus even intensify. And I think it's great that a back-to-back champion has such a big game in week 2. It's the best thing going for a young team that might think they're sweet coming after, another ring that they put on their fingers.
Where do you think the Ducks stack up, one, Pac-12, and second, kind of nationally, especially with that week 2 game you mentioned at Ohio State?
They're in the conversation in my eyes. I think the blessing that we all got by disguise last year in the Pac-12 with our season being postponed was able to watch teams that often get the benefit of the doubt. I'm talking about Auburn, Texas, Oklahoma. Like there's the big 3 in college football. Ohio State, Alabama, and Clemson. Like, they are the 3 that in my opinion, have separated when you look at what they've done over the course of the last 5-7 years. And then there's a bunch of teams that get the benefit of the doubt that aren't from the Pac-12 conference. And when I watched those teams play it, I said, I would take Cal against any of those teams and not be scared. Cal went and played North Carolina. Cal went and played Texas. Cal played Oklahoma. Cal is one of the more disciplined teams in the country. They don't have the explosive ability that the Oregon Ducks have, or maybe the defensive back prowess that Washington has, the explosive ability on offense that SC has, but you know what you're going to get. They're going to be a tough out. And the point of it is I sat back and I was like, damn, like a 21-17 win out West is kind of considered ugly, but everywhere else it's considered gritty. Okay. And it really flipped it for me to be like, these teams, they're good. They ain't like the big 3. So yeah, I think Oregon can compete with all the blue bloods around the country. And I think they have enough high-powered talent to compete against Ohio State. I think a lot of times these teams, even the Ohio States, Bama, and Clemson, specifically this year, they're going to get benefits of the doubt. Maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. In the CFP world, they shouldn't. It's based on this season only, according to their rules, right? So when I look at this season and I say, damn, Ohio State's lost a lot. I love CJ Stroud if he's going to be the quarterback there. Obviously a lot of talent. But if you mirror it to the Ducks, very similar to a large degree in terms of how they've recruited, where they've recruited. So I don't look at that game and say, wow, if Oregon can compete, they'll be lucky. I say if they can pull it out on the road, they'll be fortunate, but they're going to be in this ballgame.
Yeah, I mean, this year more than ever, no matter who your rivalries are, in those first 3 weeks, you need to be rooting for whoever the Pac-12 team is against whoever the non-Pac-12 team is. That's just kind of how it has to be because no one else is rooting for us. So we got to do it at this point. But I mean, so going into this upcoming year, I've seen draft boards for 2022. People are saying Thibodeaux might be the first one off the board, like might beat out quarterbacks this year and be the first one off the board. Like, I mean, who knows with how the NFL plays out? They tend to love their quarterbacks. But that being said, like he's been a big difference maker in the defense these last couple of years. But in that spring game, that dude looked big. Like he looks like he's on a mission. Like how much of a difference do you think additionally can he make again this year? How much of another step up can he make to improve that defense?
Well, I think that's the natural progression, and that's what he should be. I've said it to you many times, TJ. I think he's the face of the conference, right? And we don't say that a defensive player is the face of the Pac-12. When was the last time we said that, right? Let alone any other Power 5 conference. When have they ever said a defensive player is the face of the league, right? And Ndamukong Suh was not the face of the Big 12, even though he went to the Heisman as a finalist. It's just not how it works in this sport. I think with Kayvon and the hype he had when he came in and Oregon beating Alabama had a lot to his narrative, but then you watched him play. Freshman year, he was an edge rusher, situational player, dominant at the end of the season. Of course, the title game is what I'm talking about. Look at this past season, more of an every down player, dominant at times. This year, with the weight that you referenced and how Tim DeRuyter is going to utilize him, much like when he was at A&M, he had another pretty good edge rusher, right? A guy by the name of Von Miller. And when he was at Fresno State, they did a heck of a job. At Cal, he's always done a good job of putting his best player on defense in the most advantageous position. Then you add in Noah Sewell, Justin Flo, the rest of that front seven. That to me is where my eye will go when I'm evaluating and studying this team of how are they moving guys? How are they putting Kayvon in as many one-on-ones? Or if he's taken two, what are the other guys doing? How are they looping? How are they blitzing? How are they coming from pressure or coming from depth? Those are the things that this defense needs to do. And they should feel that because they know they need to stop the run. That was an area where it was kind of, uncharacteristic for them a little bit last year with what this defense had been. So I'd imagine the chip there is pretty big. He seems focused, dialed, and primed for a huge season.
And then lastly, before we go, obviously this upcoming season, assuming things are going to keep going as they are, it looks like fans are going to be back. And Autzon's widely considered one of the toughest places to play when those fans are in the stadium. What kind of, not just in general, like fans coming back, but for Autzon specifically, what kind of difference do you think that makes for this team going into next year?
I would say it makes a total difference. When you go to Autzon and you play a spring game with not that many fans, you feel the love. But when you're in there, I'd say 2015 when we had Michigan State, that was the loudest I've heard it, and you couldn't really hear anyone next to you. So it's like, all right, that's the home field advantage. You know what's going to happen come third, fourth down when you're on defense, or when your offense is rolling, you're going to hear the crowd, and it's a great thing to have and a great thing to hang your hat on.
Yeah, you look at the schedule, and to me, they need their crowd to show up, right? Because they have tough road games. Right. So they need a big advantage to me at home. Right. I'm talking because they're sneaky games. Cal's a sneaky game on a Friday night. Colorado had their spring game. It'll be a sneaky game. Washington State. All those are three games they should go win at home. Right. But if you're a little lackadaisical, or if you came off an emotional game the week before, they got tough games prior to those games. They're going to need that crowd to be real. So for the students that maybe look at that schedule and say, well, Washington's not coming, USC's not coming, Utah's not coming. Well, they're going to go win. Like, get the campaign moving. Like, nah. And you know what you want. Like, you need the juice. You need to manufacture that. To me, sometimes as a player, like you need to get developed by some of these fans and get you juiced up a little bit in critical moments of games where all of a sudden, if it's a silent stadium like it was this year, you lose games that you shouldn't have lost. And, the Ducks, obviously, where they're hoping to go, they can't afford that.
Awesome. Well, Yogs, thank you for coming on. We appreciate hearing from you. And thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We will be sure to drop any questions or comments below. We'll try to get those in the show. And we'll see you guys next time.
To host a fan show or appear as a fan on a fan show, simply create a profile on Fan Media's iOS app or website. Select your teams and make a short intro video on your phone. Show hosts, reporters, former players, and superfans can use our Get Verified feature and make an intro video as well, and our mobile newsroom staff will reach out.